One of the questions that was asked is, who are your favorite characters in your stories? And I need to explain first, for people who wouldn't know, um, it's okay for writers to love reading their own stories and loving the characters and scenes in their stories. It seems like it's arrogant or egotistical. It's not, because as a writer, I write the stories that I want to read. I write the kind of stories that I would love to read. I'm not personally heavy into reading straight romance novels. I write romance into my stories, but I just don't get interested in reading a lot of just straight romance. And therefore, I'm not interested in writing much straight romance. It just doesn't interest me. Um, Same with journalism. I'm not really interested in reading a lot of news. I mean, I enjoy it, but I just am not drawn to do that. So I'm not a reporter. I wouldn't want to be a reporter because it doesn't interest me. And so if I'm writing the kind of things I love to read, then when I've finished writing it, it makes sense that I would want to sometimes pick up my completed book and just enjoy reading it because I love the way it's written. I love the storyline. I love everything about it. It's fun because I wrote the kind of story that is fun to me. So writers can and should love their stories and their characters, and I love mine. So far, my favorite character that I've created and published is the Red Rider. Um, Helena is completely unlike me and has surprised and shocked me by some of the things she's done. That's another thing about writers that you wouldn't know is we get surprised by things that happen in our stories. And you think, well, how can you be surprised? You're making it up. It's in your own head. Yeah, but and yes, we're making it up as we go, but until we get there, we don't know what's going to happen. So, whether it's something in the outlining stage of thinking, hey, this is what will happen in this scene, or whether we have a sudden inspiration in the middle of writing it and change the direction, whenever we get that idea of, oh my gosh, he's the killer? Don't you know that? You're writing it. Yeah, but I haven't written it yet. So when I discover some of these shocking things or funny things that make me laugh or depressing things that make me cry, it's normal to be affected by my story because it's a story. It's not just me. It's a story that I've created, and once it's out there, it's separate from me. Even as I'm writing it, even as I'm writing the story, sometimes it's separate from me because characters will do things that I didn't think about them doing. And that's where we get surprised and where we end up a lot of times coming up with really great things that we discover about the characters in our stories. Helena in The Red Rider has gone through all kinds of tragedy and horrible things that have happened to her. She was attacked by a wolf when she was only 7 years old, and it left her scarred with triple marks across her face. So she's grown up with most people in her province thinking that she's ugly, and so of course she thinks she's ugly. And she's been terrified of the wolves coming back. Her whole family has been. So it's a very sad situation, but it kind of springs from that scenario of this deep sadness in her family, and also from the fact that she's based on Little Red Riding Hood, who to me is the most famous victim in all literature. With Little Red Riding Hood, you have this little girl who is sent on her own, unsupervised, off through the woods to her grandmother's house on an errand. And along the way, she strays from the path and goes off into the woods, like a lot of kids would when they're unsupervised. And then she is approached by a wolf who talks to her, and instead of thinking, whoa, a talking wolf, that's weird, that's something you don't see every day, she just has a pleasant conversation with the wolf, and says, yeah, hey, I'm on my way to my grandmother's house. We live right over there, over the hill, if you want to come over and eat us sometime. She has a great conversation with the wolf. And then, she goes on her way. And by that point, in the story, you're thinking, my gosh, don't you know anything about stranger danger? And you were the most gullible, innocent little girl who's about to be eaten in the entire world. And then she gets to her grandmother's house, and there's the wolf disguised as her grandmother, and she buys it. So this poor little girl is the most famous victim in literature. And in The Red Rider, we have that little girl that, it's not Red Riding Hood, but it, since I say that it is, it kind of gives us this feeling as if we already know the character, because we all know Red Riding Hood. But now we have this character that we feel like, okay, so I know who this is, and she's just older now. Even though that's not true, you get that feeling. And what's exciting about it is that this girl, who's supposed to be the most famous victim in literature, finally is able to overcome her fears and overcome everything that's standing in her way, and she learns to stand up and rise up and fight against the wolves that have been terrorizing her. And her name, the name that I created for her, it actually comes from the idea of a basket. We always think of Little Red Riding Hood as having the red hooded cloak and carrying a basket of goodies that she takes to her grandmother. Well, and pardon me for those who are offended, in life I use profanity about as often as I drink, like maybe 2 or 3 times a year, but I'm going to use that right now. Her name, Helena Basque, means hell in a basket, because that's what she becomes to the wolves that she's fighting. They've been terrorizing her entire life. Now she becomes like Batman as a 16-year-old, and she's a terror to the wolves. They're terrified of her because she has figured out their weakness, and now she knows not only how to fight them, but how to kill them. Whereas before this, they've been invincible. And then she goes in this one-girl war against them and becomes kind of like Rambo, and she just does some things that are surprising and shocking to the point where I've been in the middle of writing it and I'm like, oh my gosh, did she just do that? I can't believe that she did that. I can't believe I'm writing this. I'm really shocked. But that's where the story naturally went, and so that's where I followed along writing it. But I love her character. I don't think I would want to have her over for lunch in real life because she is very scary, but I love the character. After that, second most favorite character so far is my villain in the thriller Den, Gunther Grader. When I was a kid in the 70s growing up, there were always these TV shows and movies where there was a computer programmer villain, and it was always a nerd, some nerd who was scrawny and frizzy hair or something and couldn't get a date to save his life. And honestly, a lot of times it was like, well, this guy doesn't look bad, he's just thin and little bit socially awkward. I wanted to do a different twist on the idea of the computer programming nerd villain. And Gunther is, he's a programmer of these games in the theme park. So he rigs them to attack and trap people. But I wanted him to not just be intellectually intimidating, but physically intimidating. So he is 6 foot tall. He's heavy set, but he has big, strong arms and hands, and he talks like he's got a mouthful of gravel, and he's got a bad reputation of attacking girls when he was back in high school. So he is uncomfortable for Amy and most people, even to just be in the same room with. You don't want to be within a few inches of this guy because he's just massive and disturbing. So I don't know if he's I don't think he really is the scariest villain that I've created, but he is definitely the most unsettling villain. I also love the Dugan twins in Den. They are, it's interesting seeing their similarities and their differences as twins and seeing their relationship together. They're a couple of good old boys from Wisconsin who are psychotic sadists, and they're skilled archers, and they're best buddies who hang out together. But they also bicker a lot because Troy is, he sees everything as a party and he's just having fun, whereas his brother Todd is dead serious and businesslike a lot of the time, and he gets really irritated with Troy, who he thinks is often making really dumb decisions. So they fight now and then, and Troy kind of laughs it off, and I enjoy their characters, and they are also scary and wouldn't want to have lunch with them either. And then finally, I would say I really love Jack and Amanda in High Adventure. They also bicker a lot, but it's really funny when it's funnier when they do it. It's funny when the Dugans do it too, but Jack Benjamin is the most like me. He has skills with flying a plane and using his panga knife, but he also has a lot of flaws and a lot of self-doubt. He's there in a pinch for an emergency, but through the normal day-to-day events of life, sometimes he's lagging behind in being able to accomplish what he needs to be successful. And so I really relate to that. But I love his character. I love the fact that he's doing what he needs to do because it needs to be done, even though he doesn't feel like he's in the right place at the right time or the right person to do it. I really love his intended fiancée, Amanda Reachin. Amanda is completely a fish out of water. She is danger prone. She is constantly getting into one predicament after another. But the thing is, she knows that she's in the wrong place at the wrong time. But she has chosen to be there to support Jack and other people in any way she can, even if she flubs up and messes things up at times or oftentimes. She is there to help and do her best. And so in a certain sense, she's the bravest of all the characters I've created, because she knows she is not the best choice to try and survive in Africa, and that's what she keeps trying to do, is just survive. But she's a lot of fun, and I just love her character. She says some of the funniest stuff. So, and yes, it's okay for me to laugh at the funny lines that I put in her mouth. So, those are my favorite characters from my stories. Who are some of your favorite characters from either from my stories or other stories you've read, and what makes them your favorite characters? What is it that makes certain characters so appealing? Post your comments and let me know.